We come to a point when we have to talk about the grammar. And can grammar be fun? At least it can be a bit interesting. We all remember sitting through our tedious seasons of English grammar in school, and it seems almost impossible for that to be interesting, right? But learning the grammar of a foreign language is different. The grammar is really the skeleton of the language. A language, after all, consists of basically two things. One is words and the other is grammar, which is the bones of the language, which holds it all together, and words is the flesh and the clothing of the language. Basically, you never really needed to study English grammar to learn how to talk, and you already knew the grammar when you started talking. But how did you learn grammar? Not out of any book, that's sure, but your parents probably never really taught you much about actual grammar either. So you learn the grammar by hearing it and use it all around and all day long. Let's quickly talk about how small children learn their own language. It's important because it tells us something about how every one of us learn our first language. That will give you a few ideas how about we go learning a foreign language. Basically, the child has heard enough sentences in his short life to have figured out a few grammar rules on his own. And the way a child learns his first language is a fairly good method. In fact, if you are a small child, there is probably no better way to learn a language than that way. And it's virtually painless. It's not so practical for us to learn a language that way now, because it takes about 4 or 5 years of around-the-clock study for a child to learn to speak the grammar correctly, and you don't have this time for yourself. We all got much better things to do with our time. Second, for an adult, it's rather a pain to learn a language by listening to thousands upon thousands of sentences and then trying to figure out the grammar rules by example. As grown-ups, we can take advantage of our brains and our power of logic. We can learn the grammar in more organized way than the child does. So when a child is learning its first languages by listening to its parents, it is an equivalent for you listening to some recordings of being a child and listening to adults chattering around you all day long. And it puts patterns of language into your head in an organized way so that they become second nature. So when these patterns are in your mind, you can learn how to play around with them and to make variations on the pattern. Learning the grammar is a bit like driving a car or learning how to use any other complex machine. It might be fine for you to know how to steer a car down the road in a third gear if somebody shows you how, but nobody can really consider that he knows how to drive a car until he has learned to manipulate all parts of the car. You will want to know how to use the brakes and the other gears and a lot of other important things before you really feel comfortable in the car. So it is the same with language. You can learn a lot of words and sentences, but until you know how to use these words in a lot of different ways and change them all around, you can't really consider that you know the language very well. You don't really know how to drive the language yet. Grammar rules are not basically designed to make people speak correctly. They are designed to help people get their meaning across accurately and clearly. They are meant to be shortcuts or operating rules that help you put together the words. The fact is that a huge list of words is not much good if you don't know how all the words go together. You might be able to blurt out enough words in some crude way that will get across your basic needs. But your goal here is not to sound like a caveman. You hope actually to be able to talk like a really reasonable educated person. That means knowing how the words go together, or what we call the grammar. And when you're learning the grammar, you're getting inside the language. You're starting to figure out how people of that country actually use their mental process to express themselves. The grammar is really the key to this new world you're entering. Pay close attention to this part of process. You'll be surprised at distinctions the other language take great care to spell out, which in English we don't care so much about. And you cannot spend really much time arguing about different grammars and different sounding and intonation in the words. That's just the way things are. But it is interesting to see how thought process differ from language to language and country to country. That's what the languages are all about. And that's why language study teaches us so much about foreign cultures and about our own language as well. Things that we take for granted as natural turn out to be not so natural at all, but simply the way that we do things. So to conclude, each language makes its own sharp distinctions. You need to be ready to learn new distinctions that we don't make in English and to ignore the distinctions we make in English that are not there in the foreign language.